Good afternoon, Internet. I'm Ron Davis, the host of Distinctions for Life, the YouTube channel that you're tuned in. If you're on YouTube or the Facebook page that you're looking at on Facebook, Distinctions for Life helps people get what they really want in life with small changes that make a big difference. And I'm focused on helping people go from being wannabe entrepreneurs to having a sustainable and successful business. And part of that is always trying to find new ways to do things. And one of the new things I've started doing during all this time that everybody is spending alone or quarantined in their house, or however you want to look at it, is I started live streaming and getting online with my friends in the entrepreneurial community to talk about entrepreneur stuff. This is what I'm calling office hours at the moment, though I don't like those words. And so I'm probably going to change it in the future. I just haven't come up with a good idea for a new title. If you have a good idea for a title, feel free to leave it as a comment below or in the chat box. But I just get people on and we just talk about entrepreneurship or anything we want to talk about. There's no rules on this one. And today we are going to have a good friend of mine that I have known for years. Mikeworth is the founder of Venture Call, which is an organization here in Abilene that helps people with entrepreneurship. He has also started and is the founder as sort of an offshoot. He'll have to explain the relationship exactly, but called Startup Community, Abilene Startup Community. And we meet every Monday. A group of us can be anywhere from 3 people to 30 people. And we have lunch on Mondays at a different restaurant here in Abilene. You can always find out more information about that from Mike's site, which we'll get into in a little bit. But I've been going to those meetings for years as well. And there's some variations on what those meetings are. Mostly they're just lunches. And as I like to tell people when I invite them to come, they are where small business owners and entrepreneurs can talk about the things that are important to them and that they understand, and that most like employee kind of people and manager kind of people don't necessarily understand. There's some overlap between being a leader in a small business or a startup and being in business. Working for a big corporation, I guess is how you could put it. But there's a lot of things that are different, and that organization has been vital for me growing Distinctions for Life. And so I've invited Mike to be on the show. Now, I actually invited Mike to be on the show a couple of weeks ago. Was it a couple of weeks? I don't even know how long ago it was, a week or two ago. And it was the day after the last in-person meeting that we had as a startup community. And right after I'd gone to that meeting, which was at Mike's house, because all the restaurants had been closed, I decided I would go give blood. And I went and I gave blood. And if you've seen the live stream for the one that Mike was part of, what Mike was supposed to be on, I was super sick that day afterwards. And it turns out, I'm pretty sure now, it was because I gave blood. And I make the joke. I even made it the joke when I was giving my double red cells at the thing that whatever you do in life, you should give 100%, except when you're giving blood. Apparently, I gave too much blood. And so I was throwing up the next day. And when I canceled the live stream, I slept for, I don't know how long, probably 18 hours, and started feeding up the next day. And I felt fine a day or so later. But that was why we didn't have that one. But we're bringing Mike back. And without further ado, I'm going to bring in my friend and mentor, Mikeworth. Hello, Mike. How are you doing today?
Ron, so good to see you kind of over the, I guess we used to call these airwaves. I'm not sure what you'd call them now, but that's old school stuff, I know.
Yeah, but it's everybody's school now. Mm-hmm. It's kind of amazing. We did, talking about those Monday lunches, this Monday we did them via something like this. We did them via Zoom. Boy, there's a stock, if I could go back in time. I haven't looked at what Zoom stock has done, but I did ask somebody about a month ago before it really started getting bad if Zoom was a publicly traded company, and he said, yes, they are, and they were up 30% since December. I expect that's even higher now, just given how much people are using this one piece of software.
It is. I talked to my sister twice this week. She lives in Chicago, and both times we're on Zoom. In fact, my mom's in a memory care here in Abilene, and we were able to Zoom in and talk with her. And so my sister from Chicago was online, and I was online. We were able to talk to my mom over at the memory care center. And since then, that memory care center has implemented and gotten a Zoom account. And I noticed now that because everything they were doing at the time was kind of FaceTime or something like that. And so this enabled us to be able to speak, both of us at the same time. And then yesterday we Zoomed our kids in Amarillo, my sister in Chicago, my daughter across town, and we had a family meeting on Zoom.
Yeah.
So you're right. This everybody that I know is Zooming of some kind.
It's funny. It's becoming a verb, right?
Exactly.
It's like Kleenex. It's the thing. And to get a little bit back to business, but like I said, we can talk about anything we want. Is that I've used Zoom a lot. Like I'm in a mastermind group with people all over the world. We use Zoom. I've used it in a number of other organizations I've been part of. So I was familiar with the software. I had it installed on my machine, all that stuff. And it's not the only one that does this.
Oh no!
Right? Like Google has one. Google Hangouts, Google Meet are they're variations on the same thing. Skype has always been around and will do group calls as well. But it is Zoom that comes out of this as the verb.
Yeah.
Which is, being the big dog in the category, which is kind of interesting. Why does that stuff happen? Why do they win out over the others? And I don't know.
I just found it to be very easy to access and utilize. I know I talked to Dr. Paul Mason on the phone yesterday, and McMurray University is using Microsoft Team, I think they call it. So
yeah, I've heard some people mentioning Team as well. Another product that you haven't, it's been around, but you haven't really heard people talking about it until just recently, that it has become much more something that people are talking about, their team, kind of that thing. I know that Meet, which is Google's variation on Hangout, is specifically, I think, made for teaching. So there's a lot of schools that it would be the logical one for a lot of schools to use. But everybody I've talked to, and I'm out of the loop when it comes to kids, but everybody I've talked to, their teacher, now that the kids are all home doing online learning, the teachers are using Zoom in many cases.
Yeah, my sister, she's a professor at McCormick Theological Seminary in Chicago, and they have an in-house program at McCormick that they don't even use, and they've converted to Zoom there for all of their students and staying connected with them. So there's another example of a academic institution doing it.
Yeah, it's I went to church Sunday. And our church, the church I go to, live streams they've live streamed their main service. But I go to a men's group called Man Academy. We had our first Zoom meeting. There were 80 guys on that, like 80 people. And that's part of, I think, why Zoom is winning too, is just sort of that ability to see everybody that you don't necessarily get with us. But you still don't see. With 80 people, I wasn't seeing everybody, right? Like, but everybody knows how to do it now too. That's the other that they didn't before. So Mike, explain your journey as an entrepreneur and how you became an entrepreneur, how you started doing Venture Call and Abilene Startup Community. Just kind of give the watchers a view on that. If you guys have any questions who are watching, feel free to put them in chat, and we'll make Mike answer them afterwards, after he explains how this all started.
Well, we've been in Abilene for over 30 years now. I was in the Metroplex, Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and was working for Frito-Lay. and they transferred me to Abilene in January of '90. And about 14 months later, they walked in my office and said, "Okay, well, we're taking down the Abilene region," because I was a middle manager, a regional sales manager, "and you have an hour to clean your desk out." And had been with them 10 years, and my region was one of the smaller sales regions, but I was managing a $20 million budget and about 85 people. And so you can imagine it's a bit of a shock, because we were just really getting settled into Abilene. And so we tried, when I say we, my wife and I, and we just decided that we like the pace of life in Abilene, and for raising our kids. They were young in middle school, elementary school, and so we decided to stay. And as a result, eventually I got on with a organization called the West Central Texas Council of Governments, and I was in their workforce development wing of things, and ended up being their director of workforce development, which put me as a position at the local workforce center, where once again I was over a 19 county area, running all the government programs for workforce development. And then went through my second layoff. The Council of Governments, we lost the contract, and after a 10-year career with the Council of Governments, I found myself unemployed again. But by this time, the kids were out of the house and they were older. And so I just wanted to see if I could go out and make a living on my own doing what I do. And I didn't really know what I did, but what I did was what I knew the best at that point was workforce development. And so I had I call my company Synergos Consulting. And of course, Synergos comes from the idea of synergy. And so I started putting myself out there to start consulting with other workforce boards. And so that's kind of how I started my official entrepreneurship journey.
And so you were working for Workforce, which is interesting because for people who may not know what Workforce is, it's the unemployment office. Just call it what it is, right? In Texas. And the deal there is, like, they're trying to help people find jobs.
Correct.
And I think you've told me that while you were there, it was like there was no sort of concept of that people could, instead of finding a job, they could go start a business. Is that true?
Pretty much true. Back then, there was not a whole lot of emphasis on entrepreneurship at all. Primarily, the workforce boards across the state and really across the country, their purpose generally is to match employers up with prospective employees. And so it's kind of like so many things that you have on online anymore, that's trying to do the match game between the skills of a prospective employee and what the employers are needing. So they have a statewide system doing that. So you promote that, but then along the way, you've got the populations that are referred to as disadvantaged populations, that there's a lot of money and grant money from the state and the federal government and some other places sometimes to try to get these people to work. And so you're talking about welfare people, you're talking about veterans, you're talking about people with disabilities and so forth. So you have all these specialized programs that each have also sources of money flowing in, public monies primarily flowing into, then you're managing all that and still trying to facilitate this employer-employee connection. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, that really wasn't in vogue or a focus until, I guess, about 2012. I got a phone call from the director of the local workforce board, the executive director, and she had just gotten a grant once again from the state where they were promoting entrepreneurship, and wanted to know if I would be interested to come back and kind of help coordinate some of that initiative, part time. So that's how I got back connected to the workforce board.
And all right, so tell us about Abilene Startup Community and how it came to be.
Okay. So as I was working at the board, doing entrepreneurship things, it sort of morphed into, because I'm really a teacher at heart, and so I got certified in a number of Kauffman Foundation courses, Kauffman Fast Track, and so in order to sort of meet some of the goals for the workforce board, I started teaching classes myself, and I'd had a little bit of experience having been in business for myself for the last 10 years that I felt comfortable enough of being able to make application of some of those principles. And so I started teaching locally for the workforce board. And and that sort of morphed into just kind of a contract with the workforce board to where I was providing that service for them. Then as the grant money ran out, basically, then I was, I was not able to provide that service any longer. And so one of the very last classes I did was in the spring of 2015. And as I had about 12 students, and it's a 10-week course, and at the end of that time frame, I knew that there was going to be about 3 people out of that group that really were going to try to do something with what they had been learning about for the last 3 months. So I just offered to them, hey, what about us having lunch on a regular basis? Because I wanted to provide encouragement for them to be able to keep pursuing their dreams. Because my concern was that if they were just out there by themselves without some sort of linkage, they would just become overwhelmed. And so we started meeting for lunch every Monday or every Wednesday, and then that changed into every Monday. And sometimes we'd have 2 or 3 people sitting there, and then just by word of mouth, it just grew. And so that became the Abilene Startup Community that's been going on now, the weekly lunches for 5 years now. And I've always said that once that people quit showing up, so will I. But so far, people kept showing up. And Abilene, I need to back up a second. Back in probably 2011 or so, I just felt like I needed to upgrade my sole proprietorship, which was Synergos Consulting. And so I learned about LLCs, and so I wanted to become a limited liability company. So I started researching that, and I found out that I was hoping to just turn Synergos Consulting into a LLC, but you have to deal with the state, and that name was already taken. So my wife and I put our heads together, and over a few weeks we came up with the term venture call, and that name was not taken, and I wanted to have a venturecall.com, and so that's how Venture Call came about. And so everything that I do pretty much falls under the banner of Venture Call, because the essence of Venture Call in a broader scope, as you might guess from the name, we are called to this grand venture of life. And I find that so many people struggle with what their purpose is, or what they should be investing themselves in, and those kinds of things. So the larger context of Venture Call is that. And so all the other things that I do kind of fall under that umbrella, and Abilene Startup Community is part of that.
Okay. And we met because I took your startup class, one of those last classes that you took.
Yes.
And you mentioned that you had the Mondays lunches, and I started coming to those Monday lunches. And that's how we met, and we've been going on. So I was actually having a discussion with a group I'm in, and there's a guy in that group who is from the UK, and he is in a town in the UK of about 50,000 people. And he said, I started a meetup for entrepreneur types in my town. But it's been very hard, and I don't have a lot of people, and I come up with a curriculum every 2 weeks and blah, blah, blah. And then of course this happened. Right. And now makes meetups kind of not the best way to try and form community.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing was I started telling him about Abilene Startup Community, because it is always a struggle when you want to start something like that, right? Like, how much work am I starting another business? I have a business and I want to have a group of entrepreneurs that work together or meet together or whatever. But now to have that happen, I've got to do marketing and promotion and all that other stuff. And now I just created another job for myself, which is not what I want in there. And I used Abilene Startup as a story for him because I felt like we kind of bridge that. You've kind of bridged that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there isn't a lot that goes into the Monday lunches as far as prep goes.
No, there's not a lot. Probably the biggest thing that I do, it's really a coordination thing, because over the 5 years, of course, I've built kind of a database, a distribution list, if you will, and probably because of my age, I work off of email quite a bit, and also texting, because I find that from a communication standpoint, you just can't avoid the whole texting thing. Some people will only text, I never have gotten into the Instagram and Pinterest and some of these other media. But the one thing that I did do, I did stay in touch with people. And so as I set up these weekly meetings, I would go ahead and then I would email folks and say, oh, by the way, we're going to meet at such and such a restaurant tomorrow on Monday. I'd email usually on a Sunday night. And then I would text the people, or some of the people, the next morning. And I moved it around the restaurants around town, and we always met at the same time from 12 to 1, except for special events. And so I kind of built this this model, I suppose, of consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was consistent in contacting people and letting them know. And the other piece of that, which I kind of joke about, is I've got my website, and I put a lot of work into the website, and I kind of joke about the fact how nobody looks at it, but I don't really promote the website. But I found for me, it helps me maintain that consistency, because as I set up the lunches over a quarter, then I post them on my calendar in the website, and then on the homepage, I'm able to go ahead and to have a slider where I've got 4 or 5 of the next upcoming meetings there. And then the once a month event, I've gotten into the last year and a half or so, putting the video on my homepage of our guest speaker, because we have a guest speaker once a month. And so I've done a lot of stuff like that on the website. I don't know how effective it is, but it helps me maintain a discipline and a consistency.
Right. And that was when I said you're bridging the difference, because you do have one day a month that one of those Mondays a month is a bigger production. And it's always in the same place as opposed to moving around. And what amazes, one of the things I find really, I don't know, to me, it's weird having lived in Houston and then living in Abilene, is how it varies who will come depending on whether it's on the north side of Abilene or the south side of Abilene. And they're not that far apart, people. Literally, they're not that far apart.
Yeah, that's true.
You can be 15 minutes easy to go from one end to another, and that's assuming you're not starting somewhere in the middle. I know that we do get more. It makes a little more sense for people like Air Force people, because the base is sort of, the base is kind of on the west side of town, not the south side of town.
Yeah.
So it's not really that much further from the north than it is in the south, but we do get variation on that. And then we have stuff that's in the center. We go to places that are in the middle of town too.
That's true.
But then, so for 1 day a week, 1 day a month, and this is what I think my friend was trying to do for every one of his meetings, which is what we do for Second Mondays. And that's, in general, it's not huge, but it takes more of your time, right?
Yeah, it takes more coordination because I have to resource a guest speaker, and then I feel like that, and I don't. We still don't charge any money. That's the other thing.
Mhm.
It's typically still from 12 to 1, but it's at this pizza house. It has an extra uh, social room where we meet, and it's got the audio visual capabilities and so forth. And so I have to set that up with whoever the guest speaker is going to be, and then I personally always buy them lunch because Venture Call is more of a public service. I don't really make money off of it, and so I try to buy lunch for, or I do buy lunch for the guest speakers when they come, just as kind of a thank you.
Yeah.
And then they come, and so usually we start the lunch. Open at 12, but we start about 12:15, and that gives them about 40 minutes, 35 or 40 minutes to talk. And it's really interesting because it's pretty much still an open forum. Sometimes they'll talk about their startup challenges or challenges they're having in their business or different aspects of the business. And some of the people are trainers, like Ron himself, yourself. You have come and you've delivered specific topics to people as well. So there's a real value for folks to be able to come, and because even if somebody's just talking about their challenges and
Mhm.
in their business, you always learn. I mean, if you're a learner, you're going to learn something that you can apply to your own business and situation.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that has been a big, a key point that you made, a key distinction there was that it is free. Um,
Hmm.
you don't actually charge anybody to come to any of these lunches. You don't buy anybody's lunch, but you don't charge people to come, and you actually try to pick places that don't require a waiter to come to the table and keep
Right.
track of all that stuff. So we
Hmm.
have places where you go and get your food, then you come to a table is generally the criteria that is used
Hmm.
when selecting those places. And even the second Mondays where um, we have speakers, it's still at a pizza place that is a buffet. Um,
Right.
People go and they pay for their own thing, and then your expense, in that case, is yeah, that's a voluntary expense even on your part to buy
Yeah.
them lunch. So that your expenses are kept down. I think those are key things because this has kind of turned into a little bit of a discussion about how you would have the kind of start a community like the one that Venture Call is and that Startup Community is in your town. And there are just some key barriers that you've removed along
Hmm.
the line. People don't have to pay, because I think a lot of times as business owners, we're often trying to figure out how to monetize something from the beginning,
Right.
and that puts sales in the middle of it, right? Not
It
just
did.
marketing. There's got to be sales. You've got to convince
Hmm.
people to pay. And then if you remove the barrier of just the whole trouble that comes with having a waiter have to, and being a problem for the waiter, right? So we're always good to the places that we go. I'm don't know if this live, that's the way the thing works, but Potter's Pizza lets us have the room, right?
Right.
And
For free.
there's no expense for that
Mm-mm.
because they know that they're going to have 20 to 30 people. They're going to go have lunch there, and that's
Yeah.
worth it for them.
Yes.
And so that's another thing. If someone else were watching this later and trying to figure out how to do a similar thing in their town, those are all things that you've done along the way and learned along the way that have been uh, useful and would be useful. What other advice would you give someone like that who has that who would want to do something like what you do with Startup Community?
Well, so many of these innovations that have taken place over the past 5 years were just things. They're very entrepreneurial in their own right. In that, he said, "Well, uh, what's the big risk of trying something different?" So, um, me and the pizza place, and not everybody wants to have pizza or salad or whatever, but if people find value in gathering together, sometimes people will come and they won't even buy lunch, and that's a great option for them as well. Or they may not like the particular cuisine that we're at that week.
Yeah.
So that still provides options. One of the things that we've started to implement right before the COVID-19 was we've been around long enough, and we've had people that there's not an official membership, but like for instance, if you don't show up on a Monday, I will always wonder, where's Ron at this week? And typically you will text me or something if you're going to be out of town or you can't make it. And that professional courtesy is really good because it shows connection, because all of our connections are really about relationship. I've found that people that come in that are sort of trolling for business, they hear about us and they're sort of trolling for business. They don't stay very long, because what happens, business happens between the people that attend, but I always say it's an organic thing. They get to know each other and find out what each other's doing and so forth. And they see that, gosh, I have a particular need here. I bet Ron could help me with that, or Sarah could help me with that. And so it's a very organic situation, and so there's not this pressure to sell or pressure to bring leads and that kind of stuff. I think the growth of I use the growth of business in terms of organics more so than in organizations anyway. And I think we would do ourselves more service to see things from an organic standpoint as if a seed has been planted and it has to have certain nutrients and be watered and enough sunlight, and make those analogies to a business or even the physiological business, looking at your body and the interactivity of the different systems of the body. I think a lot of the narrative for business in itself has been relegated through the years as organizational studies, and you got departments and so forth and so on. So that's really not who we are. We just we connect on a very personal level, and we're not for everybody. And I realize that. I'm not trying to reach out to, to big companies and corporate CEOs and that kind of stuff. Mostly my heart is for the startup, the small business, the new stage business, and people, because that's where so much of the struggle is, to get going.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see who we have in the group too, as far as I can't remember a time when we haven't had bankers that came. They have been different bankers in different places, but
yes,
you might have somebody from a bank most of the time.
That's right.
And we have people who come who work for big corporations and aren't looking to be entrepreneurs, but they are the kind of people who entrepreneurs need to know.
Right, exactly.
And
they bring value.
I've never seen a problem with them trying to sell anything. As far as, because I think they'd understand. I think most people understand nowadays that sales is about relationship and this kind of thing. And if I know you as a banker, and then I need something from a bank, you're going to be the person I call, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I just think people talk about building a culture, and I suppose there's real intentionality in that for people that are planner type people. And I'm very much a planning kind of guy, but it seems like to me the culture of the Abilene Startup Community has just sort of evolved once again naturally. It's not like I had this grand design of how all this should look. I had set in mind that, look, I want to make it as easy as possible. Most people are going to eat lunch anyway, so let's just make it at lunchtime, and they can pay for their own lunch, and so that's keeping the cost down. So a lot of the things that I did were entrepreneurial just in their nature.
Yeah. And we got a question in the chat asking, how has the pandemic affected the group?
Okay, well, once again, we are testing. I think Ron alluded to it the last couple weeks. We have gone on Zoom, and the first week we had 5 people show up, and I think this week we had 5 or 6 people show up. And of course, these are the weeks that are just naturally where we don't have an agenda anyway.
Right.
This coming Monday, I'd already talked to another friend of mine who just came back in country, and he's got multiple businesses, and he does business in Israel and Ghana and all over the place, and he's the local guy. And so I've asked him to join us to just kind of tell us about some of the international scene of what he's seen and what's going on with his business, because his business, of all of our business people that kind of show up, for the most part, his businesses would be, you know, more developed, but there's more money involved in them and those kind of things. And so for us to be able to see and learn from him what's going on at that level of business. And so so we're testing it to see, because I'll be promoting that through my distribution list, and we'll just see how many people show up.
Yeah. And so if somebody wants to come to that, like next Monday, how are they going to find out about it?
Man, they can go to my website. They go to my website. All that stuff is posted on my website. Maybe you could point that out through this broadcast too. But that would be one way where somebody that's out of town or not from here in particular would be able to attend, is that. And plus I also have a Facebook page. There's a Facebook group called Abilene Startup Community. It's a free group. You can go on that and find out some of the events when I post. And the same thing with Venture Call.
Go to his website.
But go to the website, because that's the one I keep up with the most.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about like Zoom in particular. You have to
be invited.
You have to get a link. And I don't know if you're planning to post that link to your website, and then anybody who has that link can join the thing, or if you're just going to be sending that to your distribution list.
Well, actually, I think it is posted in my calendar.
Okay.
I think the upcoming one is actually posted in the calendar. I've been doing that. It's not going to be on the homepage. Will have a link then to my calendar, and for that day they can go in and click on that link, I believe. If not, I'll do that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
I am trying another thing on this wonderful piece of software. There we go. I'm using this piece of software called StreamYard, and I had never heard of it till all this happened. And I got to say, I really like it.
Yeah, it's cool.
All there. So this is your website.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone were to go, I don't know how well people are actually going to be able to see this. Oh, wait a minute. I'm clicking on the StreamYard view and not the actual.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you can hit events and scroll down to
that would be the 6th, right? It is
6th.
2nd. So. There you go. Yeah. So there's the Zoom link right there.
Yeah. So they can get right on that, and go back to the home page a minute, if you would, since you're there, and let's scroll down a little bit. Okay, let's see. Okay, there's Zoom. That was for March 30th. I haven't updated yet. I think the next one there, April 6th, and if you click on that details,
which would take you straight back to the page we were just on.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the usefulness of the website to somebody.
Right. And then you've also recorded the second Mondays. I know I just clicked on this, and probably YouTubing while streaming is probably not the best way, but that's actually a recording of David Cranfield. He was on the show a couple of weeks ago with Topher for our mastermind live stream, and he did a thing on Profit First.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get that and go back to people. And so there are videos of those as well. So if there's another resource that people might want to check out at Mike's website.
Yeah, and since I don't have a lot of followers, I also have a YouTube channel, and all I got to do is go to YouTube and type in Mikeworth, and there's several options there, but they can click around and they can see, and I've got quite a few videos of, but most are unedited, but they're guest speakers through the years and so forth. So there's some quite good ones. We got a Mr. Ron Davis in there, and some high profile people like that.
Yes. Well, normally this would be the part of the show where I would say, "Hey, Mike, tell us people where they can find out about you." But since we've been spending the last few minutes talking about how they can find out about you, I don't know that I have to tell them to go do that. I'm sure my viewers are smart enough to go do that. I am going to throw the link to Mike's YouTube channel into the comments/chat for people later on who come and view this after we are gone, because we are streaming now to both YouTube and Facebook and have had loyal watchers the entire time on both of those. Thank you guys for tuning in. And it's been about 40 minutes. I'm start wrapping this thing up. I'm trying to wrap it up around 30 minutes because I found that my energy runs out about 40 minutes into something like this. So we're going to wind it up. Any last words, Mike?
No, except I thank you for this opportunity. And you have been a stalwart supporter, somebody I've leaned on the past several years to help do this, and to be able to bring people in, and we're just trying to help folks out who want the help, and who want the relationships. And you're a big, huge piece of that, Ron. So thanks for doing it.
Well, it's been valuable to me, in my entrepreneurial journey as well. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to the Distinctions for Life live stream. We have these every Tuesday and Thursday. I have a special guest who's going to be on next Tuesday. She is already confirmed. If you are interested in that, subscribe to the channel and you'll automatically get notified, or just check the channel out. There will be some information about Carly going up very soon. She is I think she's a professor at Stanford, but she's also very much about, I'm not fully able to explain and articulate what Carly does, but I guarantee you it will be interesting. And that will be next Tuesday at 2:00, and more information will be coming forward. And thank you again for watching this. And for those of you who are watching it later, and you're coming back and watching a replay, I hope you got a lot out of this, and I hope people will go out and start their own entrepreneurial communities in their town, because every entrepreneur needs other entrepreneurs to help them as they are on their journey. Thank you again. This is Distinctions for Life, where I help people get what they really want in life with small changes that make a big difference. Bye.